Welcome back to Freedom Forest. Today we're going to be harvesting some Yacon. Today, New Year's Day, and we've had a couple of really hard frosts, and especially last night the ground was frozen and it's just started to thaw out now. So we thought it's a very good opportunity and quite long overdue to start harvesting some of our Yacon and then remulching around the bases of those we're not going to harvest to protect them from future frosts. And the best part about it is you get to have some delicious fresh tubers, which are great for us, and also animals love them, especially these wild beasts. They generally are fine down to about -5, but where some of the birds have been scraping around the bottoms, they've exposed some of the tubers. So if you want to come in and have a little look, give you an example of what we're talking about, just down here. So although these tubers have taken several frosts now, quite hard frosts, -3 or so, they're still feeling completely solid, but we don't want this to continue really. So we're going to go around today, harvest some, and then mulch around the others. But the important bits we're trying to protect here, just as much as the tubers, are the growing tips, which are these bits right at the base of the plants, which will provide our regrowth for next year. If you haven't already heard of Yacon, absolutely amazing tuber crop, one of my favourites actually, and I can't believe it's not more mainstream. Commonly called earth apple, ginormous tubers that you can eat raw, and they also sweeten up if you store them for a week or two indoors. So we will do a full video on these at some point, but without further ado, let's get stuck in down this end and see what's going on here. You have to excuse the thick gloves. I was over here yesterday and just digging in the soil, it was so cold that my hands were actually numb after a few minutes. So I've had to get the big boys on today. Right, just moving some of the top layer of wood chip mulch away, just so it doesn't get too mixed in with our soil mulch underneath. I've got a feeling these could be pretty deep actually. Oh, got an old red Duke of York potato there. Get that out of the way. And these are completely pest-free actually, and disease-free, which makes them an excellent crop. Oh, I've just broken that one a bit. Well, there's a small one. I think I'm going to have to do a bit of excavation around this one. One thing with these, if you do have really dense soil, they do break quite easily. So you've got to be quite careful getting them out. Oh, there we go. Right, well you can see there, that's a fairly small plant as well actually, this one. But you get really good yields from these, and haven't really put any effort into them this year other than sticking them in. So what we do now is just separate off our tubers. They break off quite easily actually. Just like that. And you can see here, these parts here are our growing tips. See these with the little buds on? So what we would do with this, you could actually plant that whole thing with this bit of storage tuber back on in the ground and then leave this stem on as well, as long as it's covered with quite a nice mulch of compost, and as long as you don't get past about -5, that will come back next year. You can also take this tuber off as well and just have literally the tips, but your plant probably won't be as big next year. And some people also, if you want to multiply your plants, best to do it in the springtime. You can actually cut these little nodules into separate pieces and they will root from these individual buds and propagate your plants in that sense. So I'm just going to go through these now, just to make the break-in bits a bit cleaner, the cuts I make, I'm going to cut them off from as close as I can to the buds where possible. Some of them, the big boys, you do just have to break off, but those wounds will heal back over. Good. Unfortunately, there's still plenty of growing material for next year. I was quite concerned that where these tips were exposed in the frost that we would have lost them all, so that's good. And literally to replant these, as you can see here, we have two great examples of tips, and they will make quite big plants if you plant back that many at one time. And as I say, you could just take a Stanley knife and just cut round here and separate, for example, this little bit off. This one here would make another plant. But if you plant them back whole like this, you get big results next year. One of the nice things about not cutting all the stems back immediately when they first get damaged by frost is that it still gives a very good indication where your plants are, which is, for us, the way we know where they were.
Look at those.
Lovely.
Nice big ones there. I like them best when they're fresh out of the ground like this, because they're really crisp and crunchy, but Dan likes it when they sweeten up and go a little bit softer. This is my favourite way to eat them.
So they are a plant as well that can require a bit of excavation around before they will come out. Just been pulling around this one, removing the worst of the soil. Not this again. Ooh, nice one.
Oh, look, lovely growing tips there.
Yeah, and again, this is a nice example of the difference between the tubers here, which are the part you eat, and the growing tips are, you can just see here. And that's what makes these such a versatile plant, is that you can do your harvesting and planting at the same time if you live in a mild area. And what you harvest is separate to what you plant back. So it's a great way for multiplying your plants and building up your stock quite quickly. Okay, so we're only going to be harvesting 4 or 5 plants today, just so we've got some tubers at home to use as and when we need them. And as I've been going, I've been planting one back in the ground, mulching round, and then from each of those plants, roughly we're having about 3 spares through dividing the crowns, and they often just fall apart as they have been today. These are good examples, and these ones here, I'm just going to keep filling up the bucket with the spares, and then some point later down the line, between now and March, if I keep these kind of just in a bag of compost out the way of the frost, I can then replant these and increase our stock even further for next season. Right, and to replant, to say we treat these as a replant perennial, so literally I may as well leave some of these thin little storage tubers on because not really any good for eating these long ones. Just get it back in there. Give it a good bit of soil around, several inches above it already. And then what I'm going to do is just grab some fresh wood chips here and just give it an extra little mulch around there, just to protect it over the next month or two, because January and February we do get some fairly hard frosts. And then these wood chips will take the worst of the brunt of it, and the ground should stay unfrozen around the bases. And that's your harvesting and your replanting done all at the same time. And on top of that, we've got some delicious tubers to take home. Ideally wash them first, but we'll give this one a little try. Oh, it's really delicious. It's not so sweet instantly after harvesting, but give these bad boys a week or so indoors and they just turn like syrup apples. Unbelievable. What we're going to do now, a couple of bags of wood chips here. I'm going to start at the end and work my way along, putting a nice thick mulch around the base of each plant to protect them throughout the winter from any more frosts. And then that way, as we need to harvest more throughout the winter season up until spring, we can just know they're protected and just take them as we need them, because they don't actually store so well indoors in warmer temperatures. So you'll probably get about maybe 2 months out of them, but this way, as long as they're protected from the frost, they're kept in perfect condition. A lot of these aren't too bad actually. It's just, as you probably know if you've seen any of our other videos, we do get a lot of birds here, crows and blackbirds, and they're always pulling around the bases of plants, so they tend to pull the mulch away and they can leave some of the tips exposed to the frost. So just a little top up really. But nothing seems to have been damaged so far. We've had some pretty heavy frosts, which is something that often comes up. I always see a lot of people asking about Yacon, can it be left in over winter? And most people advise, well actually everywhere I've ever seen or read, advise to harvest it all and completely take it out of the ground and replant in spring. But this does work. These were left in from last year as well, exactly the same method. And if you're a person who loves a tidy garden, then what you can also do, really stay down, is just come along with some secateurs, and if I can get these dogs out of the way, and just take these back. The stems will all be completely dead by the spring anyway, but just take these off like that, and then that's there in the ground then, basically just acting as like a fridge or freezer for you, and it looks relatively tidy. And then your little mound and your stems just remind you where the plant is. So we'll leave that there today. It's only a very short video, but it was just a bit ad hoc. We've decided to just do this off the cuff today, so thought we'd make a little video for you. Peace and plants.